Hey friends, and welcome to Embracing Your Season. I'm your host, Paige Peel. Now, for the regular listeners, you may notice my voice sounds a little odd. Well, all the parents out there know, kids may not share their toys, their food, or even their secrets well, but they freely share their viruses. After a week of nursing all the clinging pills back to health, I was struck down with some random mutated virus that even the doctors didn't know what it was. So that's my struggle bus, and that's why my voice sounds like it does. I'll be feeling better next week, but speaking of kids not sharing secrets, as a parent, what do you think you would do if your child came to you about their secret battle and it had the potential to destroy your relationship? Well, my guest today, Melinda Patrick, had the exact situation happen in 2011 when her daughter confessed to having same-sex attraction. The following years of victories and misses led to her mission to help other families navigate loving their child well while still placing Jesus first. You can read all about her journey in her book called The Daring Rescue: Joining Jesus in His Pursuit of Your LGBTQ Identified Child's Heart. We'll be discussing Melinda and her daughter's story more on today's episode, but make sure you stay tuned to after the conversation as I have some additional takeaways, not only from the conversation, but also as my experience as a teen therapist. Okay, let's get started now with my conversation with Melinda Patrick on this edition of Embracing Your Season. Well, Melinda, I am so excited to have you on this show today and just share your journey with us because, girl, you have been through it. But the message is that what the world or the evil one wants for no, that's not right. What the evil one wants for evil, God turns into beauty. And so thanks again for joining me so much, for joining me on the show today.
Oh, you're welcome, Paige. It's an honor to be here with you today.
So you have written this amazing book that talks about kind of your journey. It's called The Daring Rescue: Joining Jesus in His Pursuit of Your LGBTQ Identified Child's Heart. Now, of course, this is your story with you and your daughter. So tell us a little bit more about that and when did that happen?
Yes, my daughter came to me in 2011 and shared with me that at that time that she was experiencing same-sex attraction. It was something that it was not new to her, but as she was presenting it, it was new to me. And that began, unfortunately, it began a downward spiral in our relationship. But thankfully, today, I can say that even though she's still in the LGBTQ community, we have a very good relationship. And that, I have to say, all the praise goes to God for that.
That's so amazing. And when I was reading your book, and when you tell us a little bit more about that confession, she comes out and she tells you what she's been experiencing. Walk us through a little bit of your mindset when you heard, and then subsequently what you did after that.
Yeah. So that part of the book, it still makes me a little nauseous. But, at that time, I was a Bible study teacher. I had a relationship, a growing, intimate relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ for many years. I was not a new believer or follower of Jesus Christ. I was someone who is grounded in the word. I taught other women how to study God's word, and I also taught a Bible class at a local high school. So you would have expected me to be the one to do all the right things, but as she shared with me her heart, fear set in, panic set in. At that time in 2011, it's not like it was today, and I'm not trying to give excuses, but it wasn't like right now. I could probably call 5 different people that I know in my contact list in my phone, a minimum of 5 people, and all of them are walking through something similar right now. But in 2011, I knew of no one that was walking through this with a child. I knew of no child that was experiencing same sex attraction. So I felt very alone in this. I felt very protective of my daughter. And I had just walked through Christian counseling myself. So I knew the possibilities that Christian counseling brings, the healing that it offers. And so my words to her were, it's okay. I'm going to get you to a counselor. We're going to get you fixed. And in 6 months, nobody's going to know we've walked this.
Wow.
And you can only imagine
Yeah.
boing, 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 all the walls going up,
Hmm.
as my beautiful daughter sat before me and just shared a very intimate, vulnerable, painful part of her heart. And I just took it, said, that's okay. We're going to get you fixed. And I tossed it to the side.
Hmm. Wow. And this is
So,
what I
whew,
so appreciated about you is just that when I read that, of course, initially as a therapist, I'm like, oh no, oh no.
please
And
say she
then,
didn't do that. Please say
yeah,
she didn't do that.
yeah. But praise God, in the next sentence, you're like, and P.S., never do that. That is
Yeah.
not how you should handle the situation. And so, like, your humility of the journey that you've been through in the last, decade has shown that you've even come back and apologized, repented, and asked for forgiveness for the way that you have even approached that. And so I just appreciated that you were like, I did not do that well. That's not the way to do it. But again, what a great example of how parents deal with situations like this. I have heard you say this, that your child is not a person to fix, but your child is a person to love. So, why do you think it is that parents confuse fixing, like problem solving for their kids, with loving them well?
I think one of the biggest things is we see that whatever our child does, it's an immediate reflection on us. And I wish that wasn't the case. But in all honesty, it is the case that if my child is bad, then I must be bad. But then it's also not good to think that if my child is good, then I'm good. I mean, you think back at these little ones in the grocery store and they start pitching the fits, it may be nothing other than it's hungry, they're hungry and it's nap time, but they're start pitching a fit. They want everything they can see. They're mad because you're not letting them put everything in the buggy. And you, well, I can only speak for me. When that would happen, I would be like, oh my gosh, everybody's staring at us. Oh my gosh, everybody must think I'm horrible, or I don't know how to discipline my child, or, I'm not giving my child whatever it is. You feel like all eyes are on you
Hmm.
as a parent,
Yeah.
and you think, oh my goodness, I'm going to be judged for this. People are going to be talking about us behind our back. And so in one moment I'm trying to protect me and my identity, and the next I'm also trying to protect my child. Again, like I said, in 2011 it was not cool, so to speak, to be a part of the LGBT community like it is today, and
Hmm.
you just want to jump in and rescue, but that's not the right thing to do.
Right. And again, I think that we see it as love on the surface. We
Mhm.
see it as
Mhm.
problem solving for them, helping them be more comfortable. But just like our Father God shows us, is actually that actually cripples us. When we
Yes.
constantly take over for our kids, we're not building autonomy, we're not building critical thinking. And something like this, for instance, where our child is now deviating from the path, the Christian Orthodox biblical worldview, like we do take that onto ourselves as if, what did we do wrong that we led our kids astray? But I love that you point out that we are not responsible for our children's choices. Like you planted those seeds, right? But yet we have to come to that conclusion where our identity is not tied up into our children's behaviors. And so I appreciated that. But tell me a little bit more again about how the pressures to be the good Christian woman who was teaching the Bible course, who was doing the women's ministry, having a child that came out to live this lifestyle. Tell me more about that tension and that pressure to live the way that you were living.
I will tell you what happened is my daughter came out of the closet and I went in the closet. And so over a series of weeks and months, I slowly would pull myself off of whatever ministry I was on. If I was leading a Bible study, as soon as that study came to the end, I would not sign up to teach another one. And I would eventually leave the church that I had raised my children in to go to a church that I could sit on the back pew, that nobody knew to ask me any questions. They had no idea what was going on in my life. And I was just somebody there that came to worship on a regular basis. And so I put myself in a place of hiding. And with my reaction, I will not take full responsibility for this, but my actions did lead, were a big part of this. Within a matter of weeks, my daughter moved out and moved in with her father, and I was a single mom at the time. And so our relationship started in this downward spiral, and I I found myself on my knees, and just like you said just a moment ago, sometimes that's where, we need to let our children figure things out. It's that critical thinking, it's that helping them grow up and take responsibility. And that's what the Lord allowed me to do. I found myself on my face in my closet, just crying out to God, saying, "Okay, I I don't know what to do. I jumped ship to rescue her, and I'm the one that's drowning. I
Hmm.
am of no use to her. In fact, almost every word that's coming out of my mouth is hurting her in some way or hurting us, and I I give up. I give
Wow.
up, and I'm going to lean into you." And it was an extremely humbling time. Um, but I look back at that time and I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful that God did not allow me to continue on, and he is not only pursuing my daughter, he's pursuing me. And man,
Mhm.
how kind God is.
Wow. Yeah, again, I'm so moved by your story of how even in this moment, like, you disconnected from community, but God never left you, right?
Yes.
Like, he was there and how you grew from there. So tell me a little bit more about how you made that conscious choice to disconnect from community, church community, and so forth, and what led you back into God's presence?
One, it was, God meeting me there in my closet. He is what they often say, the hound dog of heaven. He's gonna continue pursuing us. But God had already established a group of friends around me, and they continued to knock on the door. They continued to call me on the phone. Some of them would even show up at the house unexpected and just say, "Hey, we haven't heard from you. You're not showing up, or you're not answering the phone, and we need to know what's going on," because it was probably 3 months before I even told anyone what was going on. And
Wow. So you had
I
your own secrets in that case then. You were
I
hiding.
absolutely had my own secrets, and so thankfully they were friends who paid attention and were thinking, "Wait a minute, this isn't something's off. This isn't normally who she is." And they kept that foot in the door, so to speak. And the enemy may have led me to the closet and led me to a place of secrecy, but the Lord met me there. And
Hmm.
I cannot ever express the importance of having godly community and godly friends around you, even if it's just one or two people that you are able to share your heart with and be open and honest and vulnerable with. Man, it makes a world of difference.
Hmm, what a lovely message, and it truly that's what the church should be, right? It's those
Yes.
people that show up, so even when we isolate, we know the Lord has already gifted us with these people. And so, if anything, that's an encouragement to us out there, right? Pursue our people, pursue our friends. When we notice something's off, we need to find them. And it's very much like this primal instinct to isolate when we are hurt, when we feel shame or guilt. And so in doing that, that's when our like flags need to pop up and say, no, I'm not going to allow my friend to do this. This is not loving them well, to allowing them to stay stuck in this isolation. Let me love them well tangibly and walk alongside them even during those hard seasons.
Mhm.
Man, that's
I
great.
had, even one of my friends one time, it was a day where a lot was going on. My home had been broken into. In fact, it was not long after my daughter had come to me and shared with me her same sex attraction. My home had been broken into,
Oh,
and I
man.
was a single mom at that time. And the perpetrator came in through my bedroom window and messed up the things in my bedroom and went back out through my bedroom
Oh
window.
my goodness. What a
The safest
violation.
place,
Yep.
yes, the safest place in my home. And so I remember just laying in the floor, and I was just I was like, God, I don't know what else you want from me. Like
Mhm.
I have nothing else except for this breath that you've given me. And I don't even know how I'm breathing, because there were a few other things that had happened that same week. And I was laying there, and all of a sudden, I mean, I'm crying, and all of a sudden I hear other sobs. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not me. So I slowly, I'm laying there, I slowly turn my head, and one of my best friends was in the floor
Oh, wow. Hmm.
just weeping. And that day, she never tried to fix it. She never said, it's going to be okay. She never said, God's got this. He's going to make something beautiful out of it. She never tried to encourage me that way. She just sat in the grief with me and wept.
Hmm.
And I still thank her to this day. That's been, I was in 2011. Today is 2024. So it's been 13 years. And every once in a while, I still send her a message and say, thank you for the gift of presence. Thank you for the ministry of presence. There's just something about not trying to fix anything or anyone, but just entering into that time of grief and grieving with those who are mourning. And yeah, God has given me some amazing friends.
Gosh, the ministry of presence. Like, that's
Yeah.
a mic drop right there. I love that. So, talking about loving people well, how do you love your child well when their behavior might be contrary to your Christian convictions?
hmm I think it's to do exactly that, is to love, but not with a world love, but with a biblical love. And we go back to 1 Corinthians 13. And even in my book, I walk parents through putting their name in that scripture. Melinda is patient. Melinda is kind. Melinda is not self boasting. Melinda is not prideful. Melinda does not rejoice with what is evil, but rejoices with the truth. And it says, love bears all things. Melinda bears all things. And so, am I doing that? And sometimes love is holding firm to that anchor of truth, to not compromise. That's really what love is. Love is continuing to hold the plumb line of truth, even when the storms are raging, and our children are off tossed about on the seas. If our children are being tossed on the seas, and we're the lighthouse, God has placed us in this position to be the lighthouse for them, and we decide to start being tossed on the seas, how are they ever going to make it home?
Hmm. Yeah.
And so, even when times are hard, we have to remain anchored to the truth. And two ways that I do that is I pray for God to give me an eternal perspective. And then I also look back and think, you know what, God, you found me. You pursued me when I was far from you, and you brought me home. And so, what you have done in my life, you can do in my daughter's life too.
So, in your book, you even talk about how the enemy is out to destroy generations, right? By taking our kids in this perspective of identity, of attraction, of gender awareness. But you talk about as well that your temporary, speaking about the eternal perspective, about loving your child in a temporary way does not help them in the eternal way. Can you speak to a little bit more about that?
Yes. What I've discovered on this journey, because over the last 12, 13 years, God has given me the opportunity also to minister to other parents and to walk with those who are leaving the LGBTQ community. There are those who are leaving the community and are pursuing Jesus and walking in healing and wholeness with Him. And when we begin to compromise, we actually do more harm than we understand to be doing. Compromise says that my temporal wants are more important than my daughter's eternal needs.
Wow.
It's actually very selfish. And I think about Jesus when he went to the cross. We can easily say, oh, well, he was Jesus. He was part God, part, he wasn't fully man. But yet when he went to the cross, he was full man then as well. He felt every hit, he felt every nail. He carried our sin and our shame, and he was exposed up there on the cross. And he could have easily stopped all of that, but he was not willing to compromise. He continued to go forth with the heart of his Father, because he knew on the other side, he lived with an eternal perspective, and he knew on the other side what he was doing was going to enable us to be with him for eternity.
Yeah.
And so I have to get to a place, and it's going back to praying, God, give me that eternal perspective. Because when I'm all caught up in my feelings, I want whatever I can get right now to numb my pain, to make me feel good. I I just want to go back to having that relationship with my daughter. I don't care if it's just a false relationship. I just want to do whatever I can to ease my pain and ease her pain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But eternity is real, and heaven is real, and hell is real. And I can be her friend now and her hate me in eternity, or I can take the risk of her not being happy with me right now and step out of the way and allow God to pursue her. And I perhaps can spend eternity with her, with Jesus. And I just strongly encourage parents. We have to know the character and the heart of God. That's the only way to walk this out,
Mm-hmm.
because that's when we begin to shift in our feelings. That's when we begin to want to compromise and
Yeah.
say, whatever, I just I need to get my fix right now.
Hmm.
But we have to be willing, out of a true biblical love, we have to be willing to hold for truth, even if it means my daughter saying, "Hey, mom, I'm not going to be in a relationship with you if you're not going to affirm me." We have to be willing to say, "That's fine, then I'm going to continue to follow Jesus. And I know the heart of my Father. I know the capability and the ability of my Lord and Savior, and I will back out so he can step in and pursue you."
Hmm. Man, what a complete surrender of your child. And
Yes.
and those out there that are listening and you have kids, like, you understand to the degree that would be required to release your
Mm.
child into the hands of the Lord, especially when they're pushing you to the place where they have these expectations for their relationship with you. And that's, I think, more of my questions for those listeners that maybe have this going on in their life right now, where their child is struggling with their identity or their gender or their attraction, and they're putting these qualifiers on their relationship. And you had even said it, that maybe they do throw the gauntlet down and say, I can't be your friend, or I
Mhm.
can't have relationships. So give some encouragement to the parents out there about how to act this out practically, of loving your child well, but still putting Jesus first.
So practically what that would look like is, especially if you have a child that is 12 or older, definitely sit down and say, can we just talk about this? Right now you're acting in emotion, and I'm not judging you, because I have a lot of emotions going on right now as well. And so can we just sit down and see if we can have some type of level-headed conversation? And I just want to remind you that I've been with you your entire life. And I may not be the perfect parent. There are no perfect parents out there. And I'm new at this as well. I've made mistakes. I'm going to probably make many more mistakes. But a real relationship is learning how to love one another in the midst of conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Our conflict does not determine your worth, and it doesn't determine my worth. And so, how can we come to a place to maybe we have to disagree, but that doesn't mean that we have to end the relationship. And I would even ask them the question that, if you're going to end the relationship with me because I'm not affirming you, what does that say about the rest of your relationships throughout life?
That's good.
Because we're never going to have a relationship, or we shouldn't, because that's codependent, if every single person agrees with us. we're going to have disagreements with our boss. We're going to have disagreements with our friends. We're going to have disagreements with our partners and our spouses. And we're going to have disagreements, with our teachers. And so does that mean you're just going to walk out on everybody? And if that's the case, why you can keep pressing in, why are you afraid to just sit and us have hard conversations? Because I'm not going anywhere. If you are afraid I'm going to get up and leave, let me tell you, I'm not going anywhere. I
Mhm.
love you. I'm in this for the long haul. I'm willing to see what we can do. I don't want to compromise my values and beliefs, but I'm also not asking you to compromise yours.
Mhm.
You would like to be respected, and I would like to be respected. We both deserve respect. And so, how can we make this relationship work and invite them into that conversation? And it's going to be uncomfortable. You're both going to have to end up coming to a place of being vulnerable, but that's what real relationship looks like.
That's right. That's right. And again, as you indicated, what a great model of having these hard conversations with other people. The topic might vary, but we do need to talk about what are our wants, what are our desires, how can we have a relationship together, because they will be counter to each other at some point. There is just something so valuable of making sure that we as parents are having those face-to-face conversations with our children, allowing them to partner with us so that we can have a relationship. But agreeing to disagree, I think, can be really momentous for them to continue in a relationship with us instead of this idea that they have to cut us off because we're not affirming. I think that's the big fear. And that's what's projected out there, is if you are not fully accepted for quote unquote who you are, then you shouldn't be in those relationships. But as you indicated, that's not healthy. That's not reality. Instead, that's
Right.
actually destructive and probably a lie from the enemy, rooted in
Abs
the enemy.
Absolutely. Well, the enemy wants to do that, and and you said this a little while ago, and I have written this in my book, that God is for the generations. He speaks from Genesis to Revelation about generations. And if he is for generations, you better believe that Satan is out to destroy generations.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we look at it with this whole trans movement. He's sterilizing. He's these young girls are coming in and they're cutting their bodies and having surgeries, and it it's exactly feeding into what the enemy wants.
Hmm.
And somebody has to be willing to hold the line. Somebody has to be willing to be uncomfortable. Somebody has to be willing to say, you know what, if you're going to walk out on the relationship, I'm still going to be here. And I do want to add this, that just because you sit down and have the hard conversation, it doesn't mean that your child isn't going to get up and say, well, I don't want any part of this. We can only control one person. We can only control one person on this journey, and that's us. And
Hmm.
we have to be willing for them to get up and walk away. And again, that goes back to trusting the heart and the character of God. But it, when they do that, I encourage you to respect their boundaries. Don't keep trying to call. Don't keep showing up at work. Don't keep, driving by their house or wherever they are. Respect their boundary. That's another way that you can love them.
Hmm. So
And
good.
they can run from your presence, but they can't run from your prayers. So you keep hitting your knees, mom and dad. You keep interceding and allowing God to bring transformation to your heart and to just walk you and guide you through that way of healing and standing in the gap for them.
Such a good word. Yes, thank you so much for that. Now let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about maybe the families or their church members that aren't going through this, that this isn't happening in their home, but they want to love people that are going through it well. What is some encouragement to them? How do we walk alongside some people or the families that are struggling in this way?
Oh, I love this question because we need you.
Yeah.
We need those that aren't walking this. We need those that maybe perhaps your son and daughter are at launched well, and you can come alongside one. You can come alongside those parents and just be a listening ear, be a sounding board for them. You can show up with just the ministry of presence. You can also show up with a meal. And, if someone passes away or someone is sick, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, so you got casseroles for months, right? You got a
Yeah.
freezer full, especially if someone
That's
passes
so
away.
good. Yeah.
But when a crisis like this hits a family, I'll be honest, I didn't have the energy to cook. I didn't have the desire to clean my house. I didn't care to make sure in those crisis days, I was doing good just to breathe and just to get up and show up at work.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
so I think we need to look at crisis like this in families just as we do if someone is sick or someone has passed away or someone has had a baby, although a baby is a celebration. But we need to be showing up in the everyday things. And just as I shared a little while ago, my friend just came in and she just laid in the floor with me. You don't have to know the right words. You don't have to try to fix anything. You don't have to bring Bible scripture. In fact, in those moments, Bible scripture is probably not what we're going to want to hear. I'm just being honest.
Surprisingly enough, that's
Yes.
right. That's right.
But, show up and bring a casserole or something to feed my other children, or, to take, for meals the next day. Send me a card or just text me and say, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm thinking of you,"
Mhm.
and pray for my child. Man, I had a couple moms that throughout that time they would text me and they would say, "Hey, this is what I'm praying for your daughter today." And oftentimes, when our children begin to wander in the wasteland, we feel like we are the only ones trying to fight for them and minister to them. And I think about Hagar, in Genesis, when Abraham and Sarah sent her out and she found herself wandering, and she finally had to put Ishmael down because she ran out of everything. And I think about how lonely she felt in those moments. But to know that someone else is praying for my child, because there were times that I couldn't even open the Bible and read it. There were times that I couldn't even pray. But just knowing, wait a minute, I can take a nap today because I'm not in this by myself. And I had one time we co-taught a Sunday school class together, and she called me and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just laying here in my child's bed." And she said, "Well, what I want you to do, I just want you to rest, and I'm just going to read Psalms." Paige, she read to me. I woke up an hour later and she was still on the phone just reading the Psalms to me. We think that we have to have everything right, but as soon as we step out in faith, God's going to give us what we need to minister to that person.
Mhm.
Then when it comes to ministering to those in the LGBT community, it's basically the same thing. You don't They're not a project to fix, they're a person to love.
Amen.
And
Yes.
just get involved in their life. They're more than the decision of embracing an LGBT identity. They love to rock climb. They may love to bake or go to cooking classes. They may love to go to concerts or love to hike. Get involved in the things that they love doing. Let them know that you see them and you
Mhm.
want to know who they are. And then the more you enter into that relationship with them, they're going to find you as someone who is trustworthy, and then they'll be able to share their hearts, their pains, maybe some of the deception, the lies that they've been believing, and God will give you the words then to speak. But we need to get back to that whole showing up for one another
That's good.
when things are not going well. And we're so busy on social media now, we think that is the thing, but we're missing the biggest thing, and that's the ministry of presence. That's exactly what Jesus gave to
Mhm.
Mary and Martha.
Mhm. Yeah.
He didn't try to come in and rebuke them and say, "Well, you should have trusted me. You knew, you know who I am, and I've shown myself to you." He just said, "Show me where he is." And he went and he wept. He
Mm.
didn't get on to them. And so we need to enter into that ministry of presence, and that's all the way around
Mm.
is doing that, and then working on our own healing. I can't walk with someone else through their healing if I have not allowed the Lord to begin doing a healing work in me.
That's right. Yep.
I don't have to have struggled with same-sex attraction or experience same-sex attraction to be able to minister to that person. All I have to know is, look, these are the areas I was broken in. This was my struggle, and this is how the Lord met me. So as faithful as he was to me, he'll be that faithful to you.
Mm.
But if we're not dealing with our stuff, we're not going to be able to walk with them. We cannot give others what we haven't received.
Mhm. I love that. It was such an amazing word, and really, it's just across the world, everyone needs to hear that message is seek help, seek community, seek the Lord, right? And I mean,
Mhm.
just so much freedom in that. So I would love for everyone, our listeners, to find your resources and especially this book. So where can they find this information?
Yes. So you can, my website is melindapatrick.org, and you can purchase the book on Amazon. And yeah, and you can, I would love to hear from you as well. If you're walking this journey, I'd love to meet with parents, and you can send me an email, melinda@melindapatrick.org.
Love that. Yeah. Thank you again so much for just your humility and boldness to share this story. Like we are just blessed by your testimony and know that it will definitely bless those that hear it today, as well as an amazing challenge again to find healing on our own, as well as walking alongside the people that put in God's path. So thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on and creating the space to bring hope to families.
Friends, I hope that you were so encouraged, if not totally impressed with Melinda and her story. I read through her book and then just having this conversation with her, I am just in awe of the way that how she handled things. Again, she admittedly did not handle things well in the beginning. I mean, how many of us parents can relate to that? But through her journey, this last decade of seeking community, seeking wisdom, even going and getting counseling, she would go back to her daughter. She would repent for things that maybe she needed to repent and ask forgiveness for, repairing some of that relationship. But yet, there's still the struggle because she is following Jesus first and foremost, and her daughter is still making the choice to follow her convictions. So, this leads us to some of the takeaways that I have today. The first one is for those parents that maybe are have had the hard conversation, maybe at some point is going to have a hard conversation with their kids. They identify as a different gender or their attraction is to the same gender. Or it could be something like they're struggling with depression and anxiety. In fact, I literally just had a conversation with a parent yesterday where he knew something was happening with his child, knew that his child was acting differently, maybe even a little depressed, but didn't know to the degree that his child was suffering until he went on his phone and saw that the child was actually confessing some self harm behaviors as well as suicidal thoughts. Sometimes our kids have secret battles. And then when we are aware of them, we get the opportunity to respond in love and with compassion. And even though there is a lot that goes behind our first reaction to this conversation, just know that if it doesn't go well the first time, you can always have subsequent conversations where you can repair maybe the mistakes you made at the beginning, but definitely continue to reunify the relationship moving forward. But for that first conversation, let's speak a little bit about that. When your child comes to you about something that maybe is a crisis situation or has the opportunity to deviate your relationship with them, don't panic. That's our first instinct. We talked about it with Melinda, is our desire is to fix the problem. The moment that we take a solution focused behavior with them, they start feeling that we're not partnering with them, we're trying to dictate to them. No longer are they invested in hearing us and our wisdom. Instead, they put up their walls and say, I have to handle this myself. My parent isn't with me. Instead, they're attacking me. So, our first point of conversation should always be Thank you for sharing this with me. I am sure that was hard to let me know that was going on with you. And secondly, I am so sorry that you've been struggling with this as long as you have and have not felt comfortable in coming to tell me. Now, automatically, you have blown open the doors of communication with them, that you see them, that you've seen the struggle, you've seen the hardship that they have been navigating through, and that you're willing to walk alongside them. I think the topic of conversation can come secondary. For instance, especially if it is deviated from your convictions, that their choices are not in alignment with what you would want for them. I think the first thing you always have to help your kids recognize is that you're in it with them and that you're alongside them and that you grieve with their struggle, but you're here to help them. So, number one, don't panic. Secondly, the ministry of presence. Sometimes our kids just need us to be with them, to hear their stories, how they're experiencing life, and especially having the ministry of presence from other people. Being with people, having people be with us. We are designed for community. And when we go through hard times, we need people. As much as we want to isolate and separate ourselves, there is something that is destructive about shutting down that line of communication, that line of connection that we have with others. So be mindful of being present with your children. Even if you disagree with maybe their lifestyle choices, those conversations will happen and they should happen. Although I'm pretty sure your kids probably already know where you stand on things, but it doesn't mean that you need to continue to have that disagreement over and over again. Sometimes it's good to just be still, be in their presence, and show them that you love them and you want to continue a relationship with them. Now, thirdly, this is for more of the people that are outside of these circumstances, people that maybe can't relate to having a child that maybe is an LGBTQ community or identity, or maybe doesn't really have a child that struggles with depression or anxiety. I need you to understand something from my experience, and I have dealt with hundreds of teenagers who have struggled with identity in varying degrees, that they just need you to see them and they need you to walk alongside them. I understand that in our society today that love and affirming are kind of one and the same, but I love the way that Melinda discussed it about how we are not always going to agree with every single friend that we have. So agreement is not necessary in order to maintain a relationship. But I certainly can love you. And I feel like love is in sharing truth. Love is being by your side. Love is being present and alongside you. Our kids need that first and foremost. But we need to help people understand that when a parent finds out that their child is struggling with depression, anxiety, or same sex attraction, that there's a grief that happens in that parent. So, for what that parent saw as a future for their child is no longer a reality. In fact, now it's changed past for them, particularly for those that maybe have same sex attraction. I don't know about you, but again, I have foreseen, hopefully, that I will have grandbabies one day. My children will be in committed relationships. When a child comes forward and says that they have same sex attraction, all of my dreams and speculations of what my children will experience in life has gone out the window. There's a deep grief that that parent will experience. We on the outside, we may not be able to experience that or completely understand it, but we understand what grief is about. And so when we can walk alongside people that are in a crisis, that are in a crisis of grief, that ministry of presence comes alongside them and shows in such a loving, honoring way that I don't need to understand exactly what you're going through, but I certainly can love you well by being here. So, friends, I hope this gives you some insight, some enlightenment, and especially for those families that are going through maybe a season where their child is making choices that you never saw coming. We just want to know that we are praying for you. We are walking alongside you. Find the community of people that can love you well. Find the secret place where you can go and be with the Lord so he can give you guidance, that he can speak over you, and be mindful that just like the Holy Spirit pursued you in your heart, he is pursuing constantly your child's heart as well. Friends, thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. We always have amazing conversations coming forward, and they are released every Tuesday. You can check them out on all major podcast platforms, or you can watch it on the Homeward YouTube channel. So be sure to tune in again next time for another edition of Embracing Your Season.